Welcome to the Better Outcomes podcast, where we discuss all things leadership, sales, and communication in Australian business. At Better Outcomes Training, we provide world-class training solutions for businesses who want to arm their teams with cutting-edge skills to lead better, sell better, and enjoy more success, purpose, and profit from the work they do. For a full breakdown of all the courses we offer, visit www.better-outcomes.com.au. There's also a link in the description. Now, on to today's podcast. Enjoy.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Better Outcomes podcast. I'm here with Paul. He's laughing already. Every week he does this to me. I'm trying to be serious.
It's like you sound like a newsreader, mate, but the people love it, you know?
I'm trying to be serious and get an intro going, and all I can hear you is cracking up in the background because you know the camera's on me at the moment, and if you said something, you'd see him laughing. Anyway, sorry, people. Not the best intro in the world. Paulie, how are you today?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. I've had a sort of a back and forth day, a couple of things I wanted to tackle that I've got across the line, which I'm happy about. But then there was other things that just seem to be just heavy load of carrying, you know, heavy load.
Yeah. It's all those little things. Yeah. Today's an RDO for me. And there's always a list at my house of stuff that I have to do. And we've talked about it before, how it drags on you, you know, like, for me, stress is those unmade decisions or unfinished projects, and just trying to knock some of those off and get the ball rolling was hard this morning, especially it was cold. Body's starting to ache when it gets cold, eh? But that's all right. We've got a remedy for that coming up. Now, today, we're going to go right up your alley, and we're going to talk about training. We're going to spend the podcast talking about training. Something we've been getting from some employees where they feel like they're not getting enough training. They're frustrated at the lack of training, or the kind of training they get. It's got, you know, the kind of the niche training and the areas they're getting trained in, and a little bit around personal development as well, compared with personal self-esteem. So personal development and personal development and professional development. So we'll dive into that a little bit. I know this is right up your alley. I know you have quite a few strong opinions on this and what should be happening and what shouldn't be happening.
Just for a change, strong opinions.
Just for a change, strongly opinionated. It's something that, especially when you started coaching me around sales, and I think I've said it before, I was maybe 8 books in or something, and I asked you for the next recommendation, and not only there was a reason why you didn't give me another book, but the main one that blew me away was the fact that, and you told me that after about 80 hours worth of study, personal development, I'd beaten I was ahead of more than 90% of the salespeople in Australia and New Zealand, which blew me away. At such a small amount, especially with just mostly audio books and seminars and podcasts that you got me to listen to. So that's what started the ball rolling for me. And that's what really opened my eyes to the fact that there's not a lot of training around for some people, which is quite sad in my eyes. That's, I know it's something you're passionate about. So tell us a little bit about it.
Listen, I mean, I think I'm kind of fortunate in this situation because I'm dealing with people who are being invested in by their businesses and, the companies that we work with. So, there's certainly people who are attending the training that are, they're being invested in the business. And I think that's a nice thing for people to see. You know, I think that very often, particularly in an employees market, if there's a lot of employers who are looking for high quality employees, we could call it an employees market. I think it's nice, one of the additional benefits or additional ways of making your package a little bit more attractive is to offer, maybe 2 or 3 days of training a year as well for individuals.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
And certainly something I saw in Europe a lot was people were, and I'm starting to see some insights of it here as well, and I think it depends on sort of different trades, different industries as well. But in the UK and Europe, there are, particularly in certain sectors I did a lot of work in, is they are quite there's not a huge amount of loyalty from employee to employer, and maybe we might even say the same in a reverse order. And I think that sounds bad to say, because we should always say there is loyalty. But the fact of the matter is, I think that if you're working for a business now, and you'll be working for that same business at the end of your life, that's probably more of a rarity now than it is a commonplace. Whereas if you go back maybe a generation or two, our parents maybe, or maybe our grandparents certainly would have had a job for life, so there was, and pension funds or pensions were tied to the businesses or what have you, and that had another reason why people would stay on for the longer. But I think there's a lot of businesses out there at the moment who are looking to develop and retain great people. And, the fact of the matter is I think a lot of employers out there have to be able to be a little bit more creative sometimes, if they can't just offer X amount of money. If it's like, if I'm going to employ you, I want to headhunt you, and you say to me, well, Paul, sure, I'll come and work for you, but I need an extra 20%. If I don't have an additional 20%, I'm going to have to find other currencies to negotiate with you on, and that's something obviously we talk about in negotiations, of salary negotiations and things like that, other currencies. And certainly I think, well, firstly, when I'm working with businesses that are investing in their teams, I see myself as somebody who needs to pass that message on as well, because I'm seeing, of course, the conversations that senior management have with me, and I want to make sure that the people that I'm training, that they see sort of the love from the senior management with regards to they're investing in you folks. They see you as assets already, and they're investing in you to be even bigger assets. And I think that it can be a beautiful aspect for a number of different reasons. But I think it can play a role with regards to morale, which I think is what you're talking about there.
Yes.
If we're having training on the regular, but at the same time, people employed to do a certain job. So, they need to be performing out there to do the job. Sometimes training is part of that. Sometimes it's a reward for it, because you are becoming even more of an asset to the employer, maybe even to the marketplace. We've spoken about how often we've spoken about finding stuff that you enjoy doing and having lots of options.
That's right. It's precisely right. I mean, this kind of goes on the back. This can be linked to what we talked about last episode with motivation. Like, getting sent on training, like you said, can be a real big boost, because especially for someone who maybe feels a bit dead-ended in their role, or a bit stuck, not sure where they're going, to get sent out on training by the company, big investment, seen as an asset, it can be a real morale boost, a real confidence booster. Like, it can turn you around and think, geez, these people actually see something in me. What are they seeing? And all of a sudden, it can start you off in this growth mindset and get you going. So
absolutely. And I think you dropped a beautiful term there. A lot of people will be very familiar with, which is the growth mindset, and actually to cultivate a growth mindset.
Yes.
And a lot of the clients that I was working with closely during COVID, I could see a difference between companies that had invested a lot pre-COVID into their teams versus teams that hadn't. Because the teams that had a lot of training with us previously, that effectively they were a lot more proactive with regards to the changes, and there was less of something that I saw a fascinating. It was a fascinating insight, was something called the sense of righteous indignation, which is something has happened to me as an individual. So I mean personally, and I don't know if this happened to you, but I know it happened to a lot of my clients, where we were working, but we were down to 4 days a week, so you're only getting paid 80% of your salary, and you can be in that situation where it's like, well, I live paycheck to paycheck. A lot of people do that. I understand that. And it's, now I'm down to 80%. So where's the additional 20% going to come from? And it's like, it can be a real trap, because it's like, this has happened to me and I'm in a bad place now. And because of that, I'm sort of, I'm angry, and it feels justified. We feel justified in doing that. I know I've certainly fallen into this trap before, but the fact of the matter is we stay where we are. We stay in a negative state. And I'm still to see ever staying in a negative state is a way that benefits the individual. But that sense of something's happened to me and I'm outraged now, and I'm becoming resistant. I think that was happening a lot less in clients that I've done a lot of work with, and really developed a real growth mindset, rather than people who professional development was something very new to.
Exactly. And something you just touched on there. I mean, if you're constantly training or you have some form of in-house training or getting in contractors to train you, in my view, it kind of keeps you up on the cutting edge. It keeps you where you need to be as a team, as a business, keeps everyone sharp, gets kind of everyone going in the right direction. And similar to what we talk about down at jiu-jitsu. Again, we throw jiu-jitsu in while I do. Rise, like you all rise together, getting training. Certain parts of the company, we've seen this before. You'll train a certain part of the company and the rest of the company will notice that these employees who got the training are like, hey, what about us? These guys have gone to the next level. We want to go too. And they start to drag everyone up with them. So it can really get the whole, like you said, can help with motivation, can help with personal confidence, can also help with staff retention.
Yeah.
And staff retention and maybe even attracting talent. If you've got a company that's always training their staff and has a budget for it and getting great outcomes off it, then that's going to attract the kind of people you want. People are going to be flocking around to get a bit of that, I reckon.
Absolutely. But again, at the same time, I think I agree with you with regards to the aspect of, okay, we've got train now, we're investing in you. That's awesome. But here's the other side of it. I think that people go to training for different reasons. I'm convinced of this. Whenever I ask people why they're at training, some people say to me, well, we get X number of seats a year that we got to undertake training in. It's like, okay, that's cool. And then I get some people who say, no, they want to be able to, sell at a higher rate, or they want to be able to lead a team more effectively. And this is the important part. This is the real important part. And it's the reason I call the business Better Outcomes, is because, and this is maybe where I take things a little bit personally, because I believe it's my responsibility to make sure I can create breakthroughs and aha moments for all the attendees in the room. Because if I can't, then what happens is they're just going through the motions. They're literally coming in, sitting down, meeting somebody new, doing training, what have you, and having a couple of laughs, same old dad jokes, yada, yada, yada. And then they're leaving maybe at 4:30, and that's a bonus because normally I finish work at 5. And that to me is, I know it happens, and I know it happens. Let's just say that. But I think it's a legitimate responsibility of the facilitator and the trainer to be able to create some degree of breakthrough. So we're actually creating behavioral change, not just information exchange. It is so easy just to give people information. And you think, again, consciously, I think self-awareness is not a huge thing. That it's something we always talk about as human beings, but it's not something people have. We don't have it at a high level, I don't think, until something really messes up and then we say, okay, well, whose fault was that? But the situation is with this is when people can have these breakthroughs, they can actually have breakthroughs where they're not just getting that information exchange, but we're starting to create behavioral change around something. Then effectively people can get a compounded or infinite return on their skill sets, on what they're doing, what they're learning. Because if you learn a brand new strategy and you learn it in a way where you're confident in applying it, you can see it in your context, and you can also see how you could apply it, how you could actually go out and apply it. Then you have a much better chance of utilizing it. But again, if we just say to people, be more emotionally intelligent, or use active listening, or be a better leader, or what have you. Personally, I think that's ridiculous. I think just saying that is ridiculous. You actually have to break things down into what actually makes you a better leader. How do you actively listen? What is the human hardwiring trap that people can fall into that stops people from active listening? How do you influence and persuade? How do you inspire? How are you able to be earning the label of approachable or charismatic or whatever my leadership is after? And and I actually cited this to some clients this week when I was doing some work with some clients. You and I, a couple of weeks back, had a conversation with regards to hard skills versus soft skills, or human skills, or what have you. And you were talking about doing your ticket, and it was process driven, and you did this, you did this, you did this. It was very process driven. It was very linear, very structured, very black and white. A process that you could follow. You got your ticket, and then you could literally go out and do it for real. Okay. And then we spoke about the soft skills or the human skills. and we spoke about why it was so much more difficult to develop these skills. And, let's leave aside all different personality types are out there, because a lot of different people, a lot of different personality types, different approaches, different values and beliefs that people hold about themselves, etc., etc., etc. But very rarely do I see people actually break down the steps as to these are the 3 things you need to do to be able to be deemed as charismatic, or these are the insights you need to have to be able to present with a high degree of confidence. It's actually, what are the elements that come together? What are the actions? What are the mantras you need to be able to remember in a tangible, predictable, repeatable way? Because once we can start to do that, you create that degree of tangibility to your audience, and therefore they're going to be able to utilize it, particularly if you can start creating mental breakthroughs that people can have. Because that makes sense. I just sensed I went on a bit of a rant there, mate.
It did. That's all right. That's what we're here for. Bet you unpack on that one, but what you're talking about there with hard skills versus soft skills, our conversation from a couple of episodes ago, and we've bumped up against this. Me and you have talked about it a little bit when we catch up and whatnot. The context of that conversation came up during a training session that we had for some of our blue collar teams.
That's right. Yeah,
we were talking about negotiation and how to get these negotiation skills. And some of the boys brought up a good point about where this was going to happen. And I realized that a lot of the time, especially maybe not so much in the corporate world, because there'd be more of a structure there, I would suggest, around a negotiation. There'd be set meeting times and a certain room where it happened. On the job site, it doesn't happen like that. You can just wake up in the morning or walk around a corner and bang, you're in the middle of a negotiation. So without knowing it, and it's hard to apply those skills if it's sudden, if you haven't done any prep work, if you're not sure. Yeah. So we talked about that for a bit, making sure that the boys got their, did their work at home and made sure before they went to site, and just to kind of write some stuff down, have it front of mind. So when it did pop up, you weren't completely underprepared.
Absolutely.
So the systems we were able to give them and the strategies that we could work on there, I think that was a real bit of a breakthrough for a lot of them, especially the site manager boys and the ones who were running the projects. They, I think they took some real benefit for that around just sit down for 20 minutes, half an hour the night before, or even in the morning, get there a bit earlier and just have a work through what you think you're going to bump up against that day or when you next see that person.
Yeah.
But it's hard to, with the soft skills in my eyes, because, like you said, I've got hard skills. What we'll call hard skills, which is all trade-based. This is logic. This is how it's done step by step. Getting these soft skills and applying them and knowing when to apply them and noticing the situation that you're in and applying that skill, seeing the result from it. It's not something you can just walk in and do straight away. It takes a lot more time to apply as well. So getting those skills to work, I think, is a lot longer. So there's something that we would have to try and work on that and get more of a set structure around. You do a lot of great work on it, and the way you deliver your, especially in negotiation and influencing, is quite. It's different from what I've ever heard it put before, and very easy to follow and very structured. So it works very well.
Yeah, it has to be. People have to leave those trainings confident and comfortable in utilizing any strategy. And if I'm flashing off with regards to how complex these strategies are and stuff like that, people get overwhelmed by them. They're not going to utilize them. But that, along with creating those aha moments, those paradigm shifts, the mindset shifts around certain things.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of breaking of old beliefs that you've got to help people with. I think a lot of people have very limiting beliefs, and if we can break those or reframe them in a different way, then they're going to be much more inspired to utilize these skill sets. If they let's say, you have the most complex strategy in the world and it's super powerful, but you go out and give a presentation and you're about to walk out and you're terrified by your audience, you can barely remember your name because it's all senior level decision makers. It's all board members. and these are people who can literally influence your career one way or the other. That's certainly the story you tell yourself. And you get to that fight or flight mentality, that overwhelm, all of that. You can't remember your name, let alone those 10 steps to use powerful approaches,
Yeah, that's right. The watching people get those aha moments, but the awareness, you spoke earlier about the awareness around like behavioral change. You've got to be made aware of what you're doing. Not a lot of the time, I think people, when you say you've got to be made aware of your behavior in order to change it, a lot of the time, and I noticed this in quite a few trainings where when we start talking about stuff like value you bring to the table or methods of influence and persuading, people will go, oh, I already do that. They're not aware that they've got that skill.
Yeah.
There's a lot of these skills that people have that they don't know they have. They don't know they do it. They do it subconsciously. And it's not until we make them aware of it that this is like a superpower that you've got. You're doing all the time. But maybe they're not implementing it at the right time. They're not using it in the right structure or with a certain other couple of key elements, which will just boost that outcome massively. The returns on that little shift of, hey, I do this all the time. You made me aware of it. Perfect example is you made me aware of how I'm really good at making good connections with people and communicating with people. And there's been quite a few instances where I've purposely turned it on, so to speak, and used everything that I can, and the outcomes have been unbelievable. And it's not something that I do all the time, but I mean consciously do all the time. But I've done it a couple of times, and it's like, wow, that if you use this and you listen to them and you pick on this and you do that, that's what you get.
Yeah,
and it's structured, it's linear, bang, and it works every time.
You can actually do it intentionally.
You can do it intentionally. Yep.
Yeah.
You can do it intentionally, and a lot of people everyone's got these skills, but some people, some are hidden, some don't realize it. And if you're made aware of it, it's not a bad thing. It's a great thing. You already do this. Start to use it in this way.
Yeah.
And away they go. So that was something else that I got my eyes open to as well in training.
Absolutely. And I like that. I like the way you termed it with regards to turning it on, because it's like game time. It's go. It's like, there was a famous story about Marilyn Monroe, I believe, on the underground, or on the, what they call it in the States, the metro.
Yeah.
And she was just walking along. She had like a hat on and glasses and what have you, and very sort of demure and reserved. And then there was, she decided to turn it on, and all of a sudden she took on this whole new sense of charisma, and her whole projection changed.
Exactly.
It's interesting. And again, that's when it comes down to, how do you actually make something like that tangible? And I think that's really what our roles are as trainers. We have to be able to bring that out in people and help to give them those better outcomes,
Yeah, and teach them how to show them what they're already doing, teach them how to put it into a structured strategy, and give them insights into how it can affect it, and when to use it, how to use it, that kind of thing. And they're skilled. The other thing, I think one of the other thing, maybe businesses are held back a little bit when it comes to providing certain training, because it's very hard to track the return on their investment.
Yeah.
I guess with sales, if you're training a sales team, because everything's about KPI and numbers, and there could be a very easy way to track the results of that training, I would suggest. But there's a lot of other areas that it's, how do you do that? How do you track the return on some of these skills that we teach, in terms of people seeing the value they bring to the table, the negotiation, the communication? Like maybe that's a little thing that's held back. Do you think that's a valid point?
I think that more people would invest in their more companies would invest in their teams if they could see a trackable return on investment. If you provide somebody $1,000 and they give you $1,001 back, you're going to keep giving that because you're going to keep getting the return. I think you're quite right. I think that with regards to things like training, it's seen as an aspirational type of thing.
Yeah. Someone's
Sorry, just some hydrogen water. And you got to get it whilst it's good. But I think it's difficult to be able to track, with the exception of sales. Sales, I think, if you provide training and you are checking back in, you're able to see what the results are like. There's clients I sort of follow up with and just see how they're going with certain things and what have you. And certainly the sales aspects is the easiest one to track. But then at the same time, salespeople, you want them out selling, so you don't want them in training every week. They want to be out selling. So I get that point as well. But
that's right. It's quite a big investment from the company, isn't it? Because that's why I think it's quite important we impress on people that if you are getting sent to training, absolutely you're an asset to that company. You've got some real worth at that place, because it's not only the cost of the training, but it's the cost of or the loss of you not being there doing your job as well. So,
absolutely, it is a big investment. I mean, I've got to give you some insight. I've got a leadership training in Sydney in a few months' time, booked in for 3 days back to back, and they've got 16 of their national, or actually international, because I know there's some people coming over from New Zealand. So I'm training 16 of their emerging leaders. Now, you bear in mind, you've got 16 leaders from. We're going to be in Sydney, and I think maybe a third of them come from Sydney. Then we've got people coming in from all other places. That's a lot of time, for your middle management to be, mid management. It's not like you're not missed or anything,
Yeah.
So it is a big investment to get people down there, and I think that I think it's a nice aspect for the businesses to have, and it kind of gives them peace of mind that they're forward moving, which of course is great, and that they look after their teams, which is awesome as well. But the thing that's important to me, man, it really is that I can talk to people afterwards, and I'm never a hard man to find about this, but just to find out how people are going with regards to the application. How they're going with regards to the application that they get. And it's great to get feedback after the workshops and stuff like that, but it's really what are the returns that you're getting? What are the things that you're utilizing?
That's right. Yeah. Especially when these skills that you learn at training are yours for life. They don't stay with the business. Like, you don't leave them behind and hand them back and off you go.
Yeah.
So that's another big investment as well, that you're going to keep forever. So these skills, they aren't just for that job, they're for your whole rest of your life. So managing to implement them and slowly help them with your own professional development, maybe even personal development as well. A lot of these skills you can use outside of the corporate arena, outside of work.
Well, I've been told I'm qualified to talk about business. I'm not qualified to talk about life. But anyway, There we go.
Wow. Hey, who am I to judge? So seeing that, the hard skills, they go with you everywhere, but these soft skills as well, they're invaluable. They're probably more important than a lot of the hard skills in most situations, I would suggest.
I would agree on that. I'd absolutely agree on that. And there's an observation I very often make in the morning is with regards to the ability to communicate. And I'm making an estimation that the quality of the communication you have with yourself and with other people is ultimately going to dictate the outcomes that you get in life. And I think that's a big one, the ability to communicate with yourself. Because I think that, and again, as soon as you move into some professional development or really start to become a regular in the professional development environment, you're always learning something. You always got an audio book on, or, you're talking to a friend about a new idea or something like that. You start to realize what your self-talk's like. And I think a lot of people battle massively with negative self-talk. Again, saying things to ourselves that we would never say to anybody else. And it's near on, it is very, very, very difficult to get your house in order, to get life in order if that self-talk with yourself is going terrible. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think the scary aspect of that is, firstly, I think that there are a lot of people who realize they don't talk nicely to themselves. They beat themselves up real bad. But then I think there's a lot of people who don't realize that they have communications with themselves as well. And I think that there's a lot of, because again, it's not something that's spoken about a hell of a lot, but people, I think a lot of the time, thinking is difficult. It's difficult to do, and it's difficult to know when your internal dialogue with yourself and be aware of what you're saying. And I think certainly something I'm very, very aware of is I have to get people to be able to have that self-talk in the right place. Because if it's not, here's the thing, you're going to turn up for that meeting tomorrow. You're going to turn up for a meeting. And you can turn up as a whole person because you're your own best mate. When I can get you to be your own best mate, which is something I think every single person battles with at some level, to be your own best mate. Or you can turn up as half a person because you've been beating yourself up the whole time. And if you've been having that negative self-talk with yourself, and again, it's easy to say, it's not easy to do. There is systems and processes to do it, of course. But once you become your own best mate, life changes completely. You can start contributing a hell of a lot more to other people than taking away. And I think that there's I think that when people are not their own best mates, and I don't think from the jump, I don't think we are our own best mates when we start out with, because we live with ourselves. We know our own insufficiencies. And I think that, you live in your house, and how long do you live in your house for? Well, you're in your house for what, 30% of your adult life, maybe more. You're in your job for 30% of your adult life, but you're with yourself 100% of the time, And again, that's why I can't train things that go against human behavior. I have to get people to be aware of what human behavior is, the pitfalls as well as the great things, and then create strategies to be able to get people to work with that.
Yeah.
Which is powerful. It really is.
That inner self-talk one. Well, I'll go back a little bit. You talked about the growth mindset and getting that personal and professional development, self-development going on. For me, I've become curious again. Very curious. My curiosity level is through the roof now. I'm wanting to know everything about everything. I'm chasing conversations. If I'm talking to someone and I find something that I want to talk about or that I've been bumping up against, I'll chase that part of the conversation. I'll purposely go back to it and find them and talk about that. And I'm getting amazed at the amount of times that when I'm thinking about something, it pops up in everyday conversation. I'll chase it down. All sorts of different stuff. So I'm very curious. That's one of the biggest outcomes that I've seen from the growth mindset is my curiosity level. I'm not being nosy. I don't care what people eat for dinner or where they go on holiday or anything like that. It's just stuff I want to, hey, I want to talk about that. That's something and I'll go and I'll talk to them about it or I'll go and chase it down or I'll look it up or find a book about it and get down that rabbit hole. So that's one thing that I don't think a lot of people think about when they talk about growth mindset. But then onto the inner self-talk, wow. Absolutely. I think it all starts from there. Like, you've got to be your own best mate. If you're not, you're in trouble. And I have struggled with this for decades, forever. I can't remember when I didn't struggle with it. And it's taken me a while to get to where I am now. But it came off the back of a podcast that Dr. Peter Attia, longevity guy, he talks about it. Wow. You listen to how he describes his inner self-talk. He was called, he had a name for his inner self-talk, was like Bobby something. He was chairman of the board. And I mean, this guy, he said, Peter says that boxing saved his life because he had an outlet. Yeah. Like, he's so good at fixing holes in walls because he spent all his childhood life punching holes in walls, right? Because of his frustration levels, and he just hated himself. And he said if he did something that wasn't up to his match grade spec, perfect, he'd berate himself just horribly. And he got some help for it. And he said Bobby in the chair in the chairman's room, in the boardroom, would be throwing chairs through windows and all sorts of stuff. And he got therapy for it. And the therapist said, Like, he was in his 40s when this happened, and he said, every time you do that and Bobby appears, you are to stop and you are to talk to yourself as though it's your best friend.
Yeah.
Who's had this happen to them, and you would talk how you would talk to them. Not talk to yourself. Picture your best friend or one of your friends. Imagine that's just happened to them, and do that. And not only do it, record you saying what you would say.
Oh, wow.
And then send the recording to me. And he goes, this therapist just got hundreds and hundreds of voice messages sent. But it worked. And in the space of 4 months, he realized that Bobby wasn't even in the boardroom anymore. He's gone.
Yeah.
And the result of that is the way that he treats other people.
Yeah.
Not only are you treating yourself very bad, you're treating others around you terribly as well.
Absolutely.
Which is something that you kind of alluded to there, and turning up, as half a person. Everyone you're bumping into is getting half of you as well.
Yeah.
Maybe not the good half.
No, it's the exhausted, fatigued half, because you've been fighting with yourself throughout the last X amount of time,
Yep. Dragging yourself down, yelling at yourself for stuff that you, for whatever reason, you know what I mean?
But because it's, the important thing is here, and I know you made mention you battle, and certainly it was a huge issue but I think every single person has it. I really do. And again, okay, let me reconsider the outliers. Let's go 95% of people, because 95% of people that I work with, again, I think battle with it. And I think that ties into that negative human hardwiring that we have, because the thing is, the truth of the matter is, it's like, if it's true that we're designed to notice the negatives way before the positives, then that's how we can very often live our life as well. So with a small exception, I think that there is a small exception. There's a few reasons why there's a small exception. We can always look back and see the times we've messed up. And we can always look back, if we're coached correctly, and think of the times we've done well. But if it's true that the human brain has got a negativity bias, we tend to focus more on the times we've messed up rather than the times we've done well. And I'm convinced of this. This is why it is useless when people say, just be in the right mindset. That's back TBU, true but useless. Or just be confident. It's like you're going against human hardwiring. You're going against human behavior here, And it's something that I think everybody battles with. But here's the crazy thing that I'll say. I think it's something that the vast majority of people battle with. But here's the scary thing. I think it manifests itself in a lot of different labels. So what I talk about that in business is people underestimate the value they bring to the table. Therefore, their professional self-esteem is not in the right place. So I've said professional self-esteem, not self-esteem. Now, if we just looked about this in life, not in business, beating yourself up could manifest itself into low self-esteem or the imposter syndrome, or feeding the bad wolf, or a lack of confidence, or it can manifest itself in so many different other areas. And if we're trying to fix the manifestation areas, the surface level problems where these things are popping up, it's like we're trying to play whack-a-mole here. We're not getting to the actual core problem. And the core problem is, how we're actually hardwired, or what is that natural tendency to notice the negatives. Now, of course, with training, we can start rewiring how we think about certain things, particularly ourselves. And that's, that's part of what I undertake. One of the primary exercises I take people through. But it's for people sitting out there thinking about this. I remember going through a real rough time, and a brutal time. And it was, I heard somebody say this, something along the lines of, that we've all got problems, and it wasn't like a negative push away kind of thing, but the person who was talking about it said we all think about times we've messed up, we all beat ourselves up like that, and that's okay. And what he meant by that was, if everybody else is doing it as well, if everybody else has got the same problem, then it's not a problem that's unique to you, which kind of, whilst it's still something to wrestle with, but it kind of makes it a little bit more okay, because you know if everybody else has got the same problem, then effectively it's not something to be overly concerned. Well, not overly, I mean, it's something you want to fix, but it's not something to be, you're the only one in the world who's ever had this problem. Then you've got a serious problem,
That's right. Yeah.
Although I think that when we're going through a rough time like that, we feel very isolated and by ourselves.
Absolutely.
And again, I think that comes back to being human,
Absolutely it is. It's hard when you're going through tough times because, like you said, you think you're all alone. I try and tell people, mate, you're not the first one to go through this. You're seriously not. There's someone out there. You're not that special. Unfortunately, someone else has been through this before.
But you do it in a way that's not condescending, which is beautiful. I think.
Yes, delivered well, not just thrown it as a hand grenade and walk off.
Absolutely, yeah.
But the inner self-talk, and it was very easy for me. Like something would go wrong, I'd be like, oh, here we go again. It's going to drag my whole day down. It's going to be one of those days, is it? And bang, down the spiral you'd go. So breaking that spiral and trying to keep, still have my days, it's still a struggle. It's not something you can just be cured of and walk away. You're still going to have, no matter how positive you are, you're still going to have stuff that drags on you. You're still going to notice negatives. It's just the way we are. But like you said, finding the positives in situations, and finding, not letting it drag you down completely, correcting that little, stopping and making that little correction, it can be very helpful. But also you touched on, you said thinking is difficult. And it's something that I've struggled with. I've noticed over the last couple of months where I've been working so hard and physically exhausted, therefore mentally exhausted as well. It's very hard to set aside time to get your thoughts in order. I've just been in a kind of machine mode. Just get up, go to work, come home, do as much as I can, and then go to sleep and get up, repeat 7 days a week kind of thing. It's very hard to get, if you're in that kind of cycle, it's very hard to find the time to just find that quiet time and get your thoughts in order, or put some energy into what you want to think about or what you want to do or the direction you want to go. So anyone who's in that situation, I feel for you. I've been there quite a few times. So getting your thoughts in order, getting your inner self-talk right is a big step as well when it comes to training and getting yourself in the right headspace.
One of the techniques, because we do talk a lot about techniques, so one of the techniques to be able to change that self-talk to some degree, obviously as a technique I use called the 5 at 5, which is very often something we utilize with building professional self-esteem. But I think that the ability to firstly notice how you're speaking to yourself, and secondly, trying to replace your can'ts with hows. And what I mean by that is like, I can't do this. If I'm taking on a new challenge, it's like, I think to myself, I can't do this. Or even worse, I'll negatively load it and I say, why can't I do this? And my brain will come back, and you ask your brain a question, it's going to come back with an answer. The answer is going to be because you're an idiot, Paul. Okay, that's why you got. Well, that makes sense. Asking a question or asking a positively loaded question, very powerful.
Yes.
It's like, how can I do this? How can I get this right?
That's right.
And it's a question that your brain might not have an answer to straight away, because if we haven't thought like that, we haven't formed those new neural pathways towards that positive. And even being aware that maybe there is a better way of doing it, know?
Yeah, you can't stop your brain from thinking. And you can't tell it what not to think either, unfortunately. Like, I think it's you that say, well, okay, now don't think about an elephant. And bang, straight away, you've pictured an elephant. You can't stop your brain from not doing something. So now a quick question for you that's just popped into my brain while we're talking about all this. Personal self-development and personal self-esteem, professional development and professional self-esteem, do they go hand in hand? Do you, and by that I mean, if you've got someone who's, can you have a lot of one and less of the other, or does it go hand in hand? Do they grow together?
That's a good question. Just from asking me the question now, I think if you've undertaken professional development, some degree of personal development, it's a way you live your life, and you then start professional development. I think they go very much hand in hand. And what I mean by that is you realize that firstly, you're not a finished product, and there is area for improvement. That's the first thing. And second thing is you're prepared to go out and learn. you're prepared to go out and make the effort to start learning. And I think those, I believe that ongoing development, professional and personal development, whether it's formal, going to a workshop, or informal, talking with a friend of yours who's further down the line, on the path you want to go, what have you, I think that is an absolute key to happiness. But I think that the ability to learn and the desire to get better, those could be effectively down to development, personal and professional. If you've been working on your skill sets in professional development, let me rephrase that. If you are used to personal development, so you've been to the personal development workshops, all of this stuff, I think that you would naturally then be more inclined and open to professional development. I think that very often, if people would go to professional development workshops as part of a job, they might not see, let me focus on developing my personal skill sets as well, my relationship with myself, stuff that's not specifically business. So yeah, I think that if you were somebody who fell into the personal development world, at the age of 15, 16, if that's possible, brilliant. And then went into work, and they started saying, listen, we'll do some training for you. I think you'd be very open to the training. I think, though, that if you'd never heard of professional development, like I hadn't, up until about the age of 30, I think, so 2 or 3 years ago, it was like, if I hadn't heard of professional development, I didn't know anything about it, then I wouldn't know there was anything like that out there. Although I did enjoy going to the training. There was like one negotiation workshop I went to when I was working in corporate.
Right. The maybe that's something that people should take into account. Like, if you're not getting the results, or you're not getting that, sorry, not the results, if you're not getting the training that you desire at work, there's a lot of other areas, a lot of other platforms and ways of getting that training yourself. You could do it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And at least start getting yourself a fundamental base going on the area, or have a bit of a think about it, a base understanding. There's nothing to say you can't go and do it yourself.
Absolutely. And listen, there's so much free information that's out there.
Right.
Even if you don't want to buy audiobooks or anything like that, just go listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
There are people who are great authors who have podcasts. You go spend 80% of the time rocking up there. You're going to learn something.
Yeah, change the algorithm on Instagram, maybe.
Yeah, there's that as well, isn't there?
Get it off puppies and dogs and footy, and turn it on to, or mine's just jiu-jitsu and surfing at the moment. I don't know why I've got those two going on at the moment.
Surfing. How did surfing get into the algorithm?
Surfing's cool, man. Surfing's cool. I still wish I was a young surfer. I couldn't surf very well back in the day, and it was terrible. Spend most of my time in the water and sitting at the beach looking at waves. But it's an attraction there to me for the water, and watching some of these, especially the big wave surfers, watching these guys, like, holy mackerel.
Yeah, Waimea and all those places, huh?
Some of the big ones, even Shipsterns Bluff and places like that, it's just madness. So watching that, and there's always David Goggins going on there this summer as well, talking about carrying boats as he's running down the road, topless in the snow. But chasing down your own learning is something that, like I talked about, curiosity, go after, chase it yourself. Don't have to wait for people to come and give it to you, or, you keep nagging your boss for it. I tell a lot of the boys, if your boss isn't giving it to you, take some time off, go and book the course in yourself.
Yeah.
Boss, I'm taking some time off, mate. I'm doing this course. 2-3 days here and there. Maybe you could go 1 day a week for a month or something. There are different ways of doing it. No truck licenses are like that. So, what was the other one I did? I think Dogman's course as well. Dogman's ticket from memory. You could do it in a block week, or you could do 1 day a week for like 6 weeks or something, 5 or 6 weeks. So ways around it. There are ways of getting it done. Professional and personal kind of go hand in hand for me. I would suggest personal self-development, professional, especially the soft skills that you teach, they are very much integratable into everyday life. Negotiation, influence and persuade. the value that you see in yourself is a huge one, because that affects your whole life.
Absolutely.
Not just professional. That's your whole life. Chris Voss's book, always go on about Chris Voss. He talks about you're in negotiations all the time. You're in negotiations at home with your wife, with your kids, because they won't go to bed. Everyone that you bump into, it's a little bit of a negotiation. So there's these skills are used everywhere. So what else have we got?
Absolutely.
We're trying to come to the end of it. This is what we do.
No, it was like I think professional development and personal development. I think they both boil down to the same thing, which is how do you use your mind? And you made mention a little bit earlier there, Cuz, as well, of a positive mindset or a negative mindset.
Yeah,
it's interesting because I'll talk about, so often talking about coming in from the right frame of mind and developing a positive growth mindset, and the argument of a positive outlook. And very rarely, but it's happened once or twice, is I've had somebody in the room who said, because I'm purveying the virtues here of obviously, a positive mindset. And they'll say to me, well, clearly you haven't lived a real life, because it's impossible to, why should I always have to go and, have a positive outlook on life? Why you obviously, you've got rose-tinted glasses on, and, you haven't lived in the real world, and they'd say a few other things. And it's just like, it's like, and I throw this back to my clients from time to time. It's like, what would you say if I was sitting in the audience and said that exactly to you? Okay. And here's my take on it. It's like, when I talk about a positive, empowered mental and emotional state, I'm not talking about hugs and high fives. I'm talking about the ability to think clearly, because if you're in that fight or flight, that negative frame of mind, you lose the ability to think clearly. That's why if you found yourself in a confrontational situation, you hopefully walked away from it, but then only 20 minutes later, you said, damn, if only I'd said A, B, and C. And you get angry with yourself because you couldn't think of those brilliant words in that moment.
That's right.
That's because when you're in a positive mental and emotional state, you have that additional 31% cognitive ability. So you're 31% smarter when you're in a positive frame of mind. Again, it's got nothing to do with hugs and high fives and the world's a perfect place, but it certainly turns up. It certainly gets you much better outcomes than, going in with a face like thunder and wanting to, to really lay down the law to somebody. You're in that you can hear that Rocky Balboa music. You're in fight or flight already, That's
right. And I would suggest to you that the great negotiators out there, and there's a lot out there, can see that in people, and depending on the circumstance, will either use their communication negotiation skills to keep them in a positive frame of mind, or if they want to, they can straighten a negative frame of mind and blow you out of the water. So, that's something to think about as well.
Yeah, that's the other thing as well. It's like, when you're really dealing with those multifaceted negotiations and people who are maybe not always that well meaning in interactions, world-class communicators can very often unsettle somebody who's coming at it from a point of arrogance or a point of aggression as well. Because, again, we go back to things like some of this ancient doctrine, like, don't be quick to anger. If you're quick to anger, you make mistakes. And I think that very often at a high level, senior level decision makers, you make a mistake, you can pay the price. And it's like, it's fine to make mistakes. We've done it before, but not when you are goaded into making a mistake.
That's right. Yeah.
You need to be able to see the whole battlefield, not just the actual battle, Yeah.
And need to step back, kind of. What does Jocko say? Step back and detach as a leader and have a good look at what's going on.
Yeah.
There's one more thing I want to talk about, and we've bumped up a little bit about it and as we're talking today, and it's the value that you bring to the table. And specifically, because I've been talking about this a little bit this week with a couple of people, is there seems to be quite a few old tradies, we'll call them, like myself, whose bodies are starting to give out, or they're sick of what they're doing, but they can't see the value in what they are, and they don't know where to go. They're dead-ended, and they can't see a way out. They've got to keep doing this job that's physically hurting them, it's wrecking their body.
Yeah.
And I know quite a few guys, old concreters, brickies,
Yeah.
chippies, who can barely walk, and you look at them and it's terrifying. Um, so what would you say to I know you've dragged me through this a little bit, but what would you say to a 55-year-old brickie who's at his wit's end with his job and doesn't want to do it anymore, getting him to change his mindset? Because I know you've had a couple of guys like these come through lately. You seem to be seeing a few more, especially
Yeah.
they're moving into sales roles.
Yeah, there's a fair few. Well, I'm seeing a lot of technically good people, and when I say that, I mean tradies as well. They're very good with a particular skill. They've got a skill. So
Yeah,
tradies, although I'm seeing it with a lot of the white collar technical stuff as well. So the accountants, the engineers,
yeah,
surveyors, people with very technical backgrounds
yeah,
that are moving more into the sales arena, which is an interesting concept, which maybe we can talk about another time.
yes,
But yeah, listen, I think that if I'm working with someone or I'm close to someone that I can see is going through a rough time with that, firstly, I've got to understand where he's coming from. And I have to understand the world and I say this to my clients, it's like, as a world-class communicator, you want to meet your target audience at their view of the world. In this case, this guy's spent, 35 years on the tools?
yeah,
35 years on the tools,
at
and his
least, yeah,
body's wrecking him. Now, the first thing I have to be able to do is before I do anything, is I have to create, well, again, what I train is two things to create that human behavioral change. First thing is the awareness. Second thing is a cost associated with staying the same or potential reward with making a change. So what I'm looking for him to do is I'm looking for him to move from a point of potentially, if I can help him make these changes, it's like, first the awareness that he's not doing something that's going to give any longevity. Now, if he's waiting for another 5 years and then he's retiring and then he's happy, that's cool. That's so circumstance is going to dictate. But let's bear in mind that, let's say he's at the end of his tether, he wants to do something else, but he's just not confident in it. What I have to do is I have to firstly make him aware, or him to come to his own conclusions, that this is not the right role he's in. Yes, he's between a rock and a hard place because this is all he knows. So the awareness is the first thing. Second thing is the cost associated with staying the same or potential reward to make a change. What is the cost? If you don't make a change, what is the cost? Well, what is that cost? He's going to be bedridden. What's the situation? I don't know. But what is a potential reward? A potential reward could be, well, maybe I could take something from, I could take one of the skills I've got and I could, go into a different industry or take a different role in the same industry. And a great example is moving off the tools into a sales role, or a management role. And I think that those are the first two things, because if I can use those two approaches, then very often what's going to happen is at least I'm going to open his mind up. Now, he has to be able to trust me, or whoever needs to be able to trust me that I can work with them. And I want to start just planting seeds with regards to maybe other skill sets I see that they've got. I don't expect a 180-degree shift straight away, particularly if he's very cantankerous or just down the line. But I think very often, again, depending on the context, if he's working with me, then I might take a different approach to if he's my mate, or if he's working for me, that might be a different approach as well.
yeah,
But I think I have to start effectively getting him to see what I see in him, getting him to see that there are other options out there. But without, again, the awareness, cost associated with staying the same, potential reward to make a change, it's very difficult. And it's a rough go for him as well, because, every day he wakes up and he's in pain, and life gets in that negative, and then you start going down the route of stuff to reduce the pain, whatever that might be. And that comes with its own story as well.
That's right.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Precisely what you said, and getting them to understand that the experience they've got they're a subject matter expert. I would suggest that a 55-year-old bricklayer who's been doing it, let's say 30, 40 years, there's absolutely knows absolutely everything top to bottom
Yeah.
of the brick market, and a lot of the building industry, a fair bit about residential building and commercial building as well, I would suggest, and the associated, the logistics with it, and everything else that's tied in. So being able to harness that and see that and use that as a potential role that you could move into would be where I'd be aiming at as well, getting them to see the value that they bring. I know me and the big fella Ren talked about it a little bit when he shifted roles. He was struggling with a few things, especially around computers. He was struggling around Excel spreadsheets and things like that.
Yeah, sure.
He was saying these young people, they bang out an Excel spreadsheet like that and not sure what's going on. I said, yeah, but they can't walk onto a job site and look at what you look at and see the things that you see. They can't tell if this was done the wrong way or that was wrong, or they're setting it up wrong. So, there's that side of things, as well as there's that expertise and experience that's born through decades of work. So
absolutely. And I mean, if they do have those skill sets, or I think everybody has different skill sets or skill sets in different areas. Just do they actually see it? Do they see it first? But here's the other thing, and just with what you've been saying there, one of the biggest resistors I see in people who are not wanting to make a change or resistant to change is their own confidence in making change.
Yeah.
It's their confidence in making change. And a beautiful technique to overcome that is just ask them about a time they made a change in the past. And that might be as simple as, when a new regulation came in from on the building side, how did you deal with that? And they, you talked about it, or tell me about the time when you learned to drive, and what you're starting to do is getting people to be able to, remember that time with regards to they've got proof now that they have been able to make changes.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Like some people will wait until change is forced upon them.
Yeah.
Or they do anything about it, even though they know it's coming and it's looming. So that's something that I want to work, that I'm passionate about. Being an old tradie myself, I'll always see myself as an old tradie. I mean, I'm old and I'm a tradie, so but that's something that I'm passionate about, and I think that's going to be where I try and I'm moving forward to. It's going to be something that I'm looking at, because I really think that there's we can put something together and help some people out there, which will be which is my motivating goal. So
there's nothing, there's no shortness, there's no there are so many opportunities out there, mate. It's just where do you want to put your focus? Where you're going to be able to best serve what you're after. For real, I mean, once you start really looking for opportunities, you're going to see more than you can, more than you can believe. But if you're chasing all of them, you're not going to get a lot of traction with any of them. So it's like which is the one I'm going to focus on, and then
that's right. Focus your energies. So
yeah, absolutely.
That I think is a pretty good broad view of what's going on in training, what we think's going on with training anyway. So touched on a few good points there, Paulie. What do you reckon?
There we go. Well, I hope so, mate.
We could sit here and talk about it forever, couldn't we?
Absolutely.
Go to these rabbit holes and pull it all apart. So I'm hoping that's helped some people out there. I know the other stuff that we're talking about is, as always, if you've got any other questions or you want something further, give us a yell. We're not hard people to find. We're around on socials and I'm going to be a little bit harder to find. I won't be in the country for a little while, but
lifestyles of the rich and famous, huh?
Might be getting papped in Canggu, but I won't be getting any photos taken of me around here. So
there you go.
Thank you once again for your time. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for your feedback and all the support you're giving us. Paulie, thank you again for your words of wisdom. And we'll sign off. We'll catch you all on the next one. Take care, everyone. Thank you all very much.
Thanks for everything you do, guys. Appreciate it, mate.
No problem at all. See you later, buddy.
Cheers, eh?